All right, our first guest today is a decorated active duty Army lieutenant colonel who's been deployed to combat zones 4 times between 1991 and 2011, including Iraq and Afghanistan. Good friends with our friend Matthew Ho, by the way, so give him that endorsement. I think he hooked us up initially when we first got Army Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Davis on the show. He's joining us now again, and today we're talking about his new organization, which is attempting to change the paradigm of power, money, and politics. It's called Democracy Awake, democracyawake.org, at Democracy Awake. Danny, or I should say Lieutenant Colonel Davis, welcome back to the conversation. How are you?
You know, I'm doing really good, Pete, and thanks. And actually, Danny is the right thing to do. I'm just about to retire, as I think you may have mentioned, so I'm good with that.
Well, Danny, thank you very much for joining us. Thank you for your service. Talk to us just a little bit about your career, how long you've been in, why you joined, et cetera. Anything you want.
Yeah, sure. I joined as a private, actually, back in 1985. I was not just about to graduate from college, and I thought, I wanted to, serve my country and do my bit before I got into my career and all that kind of thing. But once I got in, I thought, hey, this is pretty good. I like this. And so I served a couple of years as an enlisted, and then got a commission as an officer later. And now here, almost 21 years later, here I am.
What was your job?
Well, I started off as a multiple launch rocket crewman, and ended up being an armor officer, an M1A1 armor officer, cav officer. So
M1A1, that's a tank for those who don't know. Of course, I'm a tank expert, Danny. You know that.
Well, of course.
And then I climbed on one in 1980, and it certainly wasn't an M1A1. It was at the Army Reserve in Syracuse. Anyway, so what is that? What does that mean that you were doing? What were you doing?
Well, for example, like in Desert Storm, with the 2nd Armored Cavalry was the kind of the vanguard of that big left hook you may remember from Schwarzkopf's big deal that hit the Republican Guard in the north. Mm-hmm. We were the ones, in other combat operations where you're the first guys out there to try to develop the situation, and then let the guys behind you know so that they know what they're facing when they get up there.
Were you in a tank?
Yeah. You
were in a tank during Desert Storm in 91.
In Desert Storm, I was in a different kind of armored vehicle. I transitioned to armor later, but I was in a fire support armored vehicle at that time.
Got it. All right. And so you certainly witnessed your share of combat, or what, Danny?
Yeah, I have. I've seen actually a very wide gamut. I mean, everything from tank on tank combat to standard counterinsurgency to military training kind of deal. I was a trainer for an Iraq border battalion in 2009, and just a pretty good broad brush of it. I've had a pretty good experience.
So when you look at, and we're getting to your organization and everything here, democracyawake.org. I'll say it 1,000 times. I want everybody to support it and the money, the fundraiser for it. It's at Indiegogo, right?
Right.
And I'll plug that and so on. But I mean, when you look at Desert Storm, when you look at battles that were fought in Iraq and Afghanistan, I wonder if we're ever going to have, and how should we budget for future wars. We heard Ash Carter make a pretty big speech about cyber warfare and the significance of it in the future, but it just seems like we're still spending millions and billions of dollars on planes and tanks like the M1A1 that you know everything about, and other weapons that we may not really ever need to use, or could be outdated in terms of the future of warfare. What is your? I mean, anything could happen. I suppose we could get in a war with China or Russia, and Russian tanks at each other and so on. But I mean, I feel like warfare is not going to look like it does in the Marine recruiting commercial.
Well, I definitely do have some views on this, and the thing about combat, you can see, I mean, going back literally thousands of years, is it almost never works out or shows up the way that you're expecting to, and the way people were preparing. So kind of my view is that you have to be prepared for the things that could cause the most lethal threat for the survival of your country and for your defense, and you've got to be able to handle that but then you also have to do it in an intelligent way of what are the capabilities that are out there. What could an enemy force do? We'll just use Russia and China that you just mentioned. If the worst situation happened, what could they do? And you have to be able to handle that. But see, my view is that we're doing a horrible job right now because we're not really doing that. We're trying to prepare for the last war with more counterinsurgencies, which I think have just been abysmal and disaster and definitely should not be repeated. But the things that we're doing, especially in the acquisition, we're going after this weapon system or that vehicle platform, almost independent of any kind of rational strategy of what are we trying to accomplish. And so as a result, we just get a bunch of stuff that may or may not have anything to do with supporting our strategic view of what we need to prepare for. So it's just a great deal of waste, in my view.
But I feel like that goes back to this entire issue and why you've gotten involved. Is that true or no? I mean, you've seen the way that money gets spent, knowing that it's misappropriated, especially in the military, and understanding that each congressperson has a district or a state. They got people who fund their campaigns, and sometimes those people are, in this case, from the defense industry, and that's how we get to where we've gotten.
That's a fact. Yeah, that is definitely an element of what's driven me to what I'm trying to do right now, because I've seen a lot of that, and it's just very, very discouraging.
The other issue, of course, and you've been very outspoken on your stance in the war in Afghanistan and Iraq and so on. Again, we're talking to active duty Army Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Davis with democracyawake.org. At Democracy Awake, is that you understand intimately, I suppose, how domestic politics affects foreign policy. Does that have anything to do with why you're trying to get money out of politics?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the products of the first time you had me on your show in the 2012 Afghan report that I published upon my second return from Afghanistan is that I was able to get to see much more inside what's going on in up on the Hill, because there's a number of representatives and senators that both spent some time with me, and I was able to see kind of how things work on the inside. I got to know a number of staff members up there. And so as a product of seeing that side of it, as well as the other side that, as a member of the military and then living here in Washington, D.C., I was kind of exposed to a little bit broader of a education, if you will, of kind of what things are going on. And that is just definitely not something that most Americans would like if they knew.
What is it? What did you learn?
Well, a lot of this isn't a big surprise, but there's a couple of parts that are surprising. First of all, it is on this. There's some egregious points like you're talking about where certain members have huge amounts of support from the defense industry, for example. We'll stay with that one. And then you see all these policy decisions that, curiously enough, support those very industries, and sometimes even those companies, they end up benefiting from that. And then you look at other members and other even chairmen of different committees or whatever, and they don't get hardly any or don't get any money from those things. And you see there's pretty direct line of where the money's going and what the end result is in terms of what Congress ends up doing. And, that's just got to be fixed. And then on the positive side, though, I'll tell you, because it's not all bad news, there are a number of legislators up there on both parties in both chambers that want to do the right thing. They have a deep love of their country, but the system itself is just kind of so, fixed or broken that it's really hard for them to accomplish doing the right thing.
Yeah, and I know a bunch of them as well. I've met a bunch of legislators, and I mention their names all the time, and both parties. But I mean, almost none of them, enjoy the idea of having to spend, in some cases, 40 hours a week on the phone raising money. Most people work 40 hours a week. These guys, men and women, are spending 40 hours, some of them, if not. Why should you spend an hour a week raising money for your next campaign? They tell me on and off the record that they hate doing that. But that's the system that they're working in, as you so well put. This is a really good organization. I very, very badly want you to go to democracyawake.org and take a look at this. I know there's a lot of people out there who think that this is a hopeless cause. I know there are a lot of people who think it's the most important cause and that it's hopeless. And then there are people like me that think this is the most important cause and that it's not necessarily hopeless, because I can't be hopeless. Are you there, Danny?
Yeah,
That's
I
better.
am here. Is that any better?
That's perfect. So, what was my question that you were answering?
We were talking about the money and what can be done about it.
Yeah.
Everybody knows that Washington is dysfunctional, and everybody, conceptually knows that money in politics is bad, but they don't really know what that means. But when they find out what that means, then they usually get mad, as I did. And here's the real issue. In the 2012 congressional elections, which is the last one that I have full details and analysis for, there was a tiny sliver of the American population, 1/10,000th, that funded 100% of all of the winners. Nobody won a seat in Congress who did not get money from this very small group of extremely wealthy Americans. And so you see right off the top there that it was about 1/10,000th was the number. They had more influence on who won than the rest of the 315 million of us combined. So in effect, we have all been disenfranchised, and only this small group gets to decide that. But it gets worse. Once they're in there was a report or a study from Princeton and Northwestern about 6 months ago, which showed that when you do an analysis over like 20 years of congressional decisions, you see who influences Congress for policies that they want, whether it's interest groups, wealthy Americans, or the rest of us. When they look at those three groups, not surprisingly, interest groups had about a 46% success rate when they wanted something to happen or not. Wealthy Americans slightly less. I believe it was 36. But regular Americans, all the rest of us, virtually none. Not virtually none. It was none. And so you have two things. Number one, you have no influence over who goes into Congress. Right. And then once they get in there, you have no influence over what they do. And that's not right.
Well, I'm not going to say no, because I think we can still have some influence. I want to keep the door open a little a crack, Danny, but I certainly agree with you, and I love these statistics. Well, I hate them, but I appreciate you throwing them out there. But let me ask you this. When I found out you were doing this from our mutual friend Matthew Ho, my first question was, my first thought was, that's awesome that a career military man has seen this issue and is taking it on himself to fight it. But why create democracyawake.org as opposed to getting involved with organizations like Lawrence Lessig's? Or what's different about Democracy Awake?
Well, see, I've seen a lot of those organizations, and I think that they all have various problems about what they don't have a solution that I think has a viable shot. So what I'm trying to do is provide something they don't, and actually pool some of their other capabilities together to provide something that altogether can make a difference.
You have served this country in engagements that you didn't necessarily agree with. Nonetheless, we appreciate that. What are you asking the people who haven't served or people who are maybe apathetic? What are you asking my audience right now and Americans to do? Go ahead, make the ask.
What I'm asking is for you to go check out our website and democracyawake.org. Look at what we're proposing and see how you can get plugged in, how we're going to help you get plugged in, and how we're going to help you make a difference, because you do matter. The numbers say we haven't enough. I want you to matter, and I think we have a really good plan to make your influence back again to what it's supposed to be, so that this country makes its decisions based on what the people actually want, and not solely this one small group of wealthy Americans.
It's awesome. You've served the country how many years now? 20 what?
21.
21 years, Danny Davis has been in the United States Army. Could you take 21 seconds today to go to democracyawake.org, sign the petition, donate whatever you can? It's an awesome, awesome organization, and knowing Danny, he's not going to let go until he's finished. I really, really appreciate you joining us. I'm psyched about this organization. I want to find out as many different ways as we can to help you. And thank you, Danny, for coming on and for everything. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. I'm very grateful. Thank you.
All right, buddy. It is, by the way, the 40th anniversary of the end of the Vietnam War. You still there, Danny?
I am.
Yeah, so pretty poignant, sad. I say Vietnam War. It never was a war. Conflict.
Right.
And so, we've seen how long we've been having these problems, and we've seen what money has to do with it. So, and the 40th anniversary of the end of the Vietnam War this week, a good time to take up this issue to prevent more wars and many other more issues that are not in America's interest. Thanks, Danny.
Thanks, Pete.